Okay, so where we got to yesterday was on page Tov Kuf Mem Vav, in the way in the back. So he's comparing the Torah's Chacham to the Shem and Sasson. Perhaps, let's see some different ideas that they're talking about here. What the subject is, let's see, here we go. So he said, he did a Torah's Chacham. He said, Mashra shall the Odom of parts of a Yamim. So he has two concepts. Parts of a Yamim is one of them, but parts of a Zmanim, Hem Shavim Be'inyan the Kavana B'Tikunim. Now, I'm not sure what that phrase meant, but he says they're equivalent to the Kavana that we should have and in what they accomplish. Ki b'moadim yesh the Kaveh B'Tikun Partzufim Zun the Klavos Hoshana the Yamim the Zmanim. So because when you're doing the Moadim, we have a Moed coming up. So over in the Moed, so he says, Ki b'moadim yesh the Kaveh B'Tikun Partzufim Zun the Klavos Hoshana the Yamim the Zmanim, of both of the days and also the timing, the seasons, or I'll call it the seasons. Became the Rosh Chodesh b'Partzufim HaChodesh the Yamim the Zmanim. So there has to be both. The Kavanah has to be with both of them. So he says also, you have to think of it, I'm not sure that I really understand it, but he says you have to think of it in terms of the days and also the seasons. Every single day. There is a concentration when your kavanah should be on both, on how it fits into a bigger cycle or the bigger cycles, how it is in terms of the days, the counting of the days, and also the countings of the periods of the year, which are I'm calling them holidays or seasons. Because it's not really clear exactly how the RASHASH is saying on Nizkar. So the really difference between what he calls the seasons and the days, he says the Yomim, and he says so that the difference between them is only in terms of outside of the la'acher klalus Hoshana shezeh olav v'nichlo be'eser shana v'zera v'olav v'nichlo b'shev shanim shal the Shmitah. Because over here, let me just read again. He had the idea previously about this, so let's see one more time. So only after, I don't know, the whole kolol of the year, because at the end of the year that you see that the cycle that you went through is v'nichlo be'eser shanim, so it could be, say, like 10 years, a decade. So it's like a decade of years. But at the same time, but at the same time, there's the seasonal idea. Is that the Shmitah, I'm calling it season, I don't have a good word for it yet. Okay, Neked Rabbi Salman Eliyahu, he says, of the Siduro, he said, V'chein Kasa Benuscha Hadefila HaKolelas, Shenisadra HaLe'omba B'kocho B'yom V'nidbas B'sidr HaNidvas, that it's placed in the Nidvas, which I'm thinking he means what we call the mudfas, or the nidfas, the published sitter, he says, sheyesh the kaveh b'kol yom, so every single day, the sakim gam b'bechinas sheshes yimei bereshis, you should have an idea that it's also part of a tikkun that takes place for the 6 days of creation, b'gam b'bechinas zmanim, but also not just that, so 6 days of creation, I guess this is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and also that it's a part of a bigger cycle, another cycle of Zamanim. V'chein Dayak Rebbe Aaron Freda, Ferreira, he says, Ferreira, I guess it probably, he says, he pronounced it Ferreira. He says, Ferreira, he says, Snimas Lashon Rishaz of the Nizker B'nar Shalom, Umunach B'dar Tefilach, and Nizker Shekach, he das Rashash, because that's what the thinking of the Rashash is. And noted das HaSimchas Kohen. So what did he actually say is that you have 2 cycles, just like we saw with the concept of the Kad Shaus, that you have 2 cycles that are taking place every single day or every single moment. One is a part of the count of like what he said, days, weeks, months, years, like that. That's a certain type of cycle, but also there's part a Shmitah cycle, say for example, or a Yovel cycle, and there are other cycles. The Shem Sasam Bedrashi Hamida, when he talks over there about the Drashim Hamida, Al Midas Ba'ava, when he talks about the Midah of Ava, Kasasha Limrosha Be'embe Bekoch B'yom Nisaknim Ayedeh Tefiloselu Shtei Bechinas Yachad, that we're doing always two different aspects of time. Yachad Gam Beparts of Yomim, Begam Beparts of Azmanim. So we say that both of these are taking place at the same time. Mikol Malkom Yesh Chiluk. But he said, even though, so of course it's a chiluk. So he said, but there's a big difference. Ki b'kol yibos hashana, iker kavan the seder b'b'chidish sheshes shemei bereishis. So during the all the days, it is that each one of the years, I don't know, is a part of a tikkun of the cycle of bereishis. The b'chidish hazamanim na'asen mecholov ve'ina oilev b'shem. So, and that in that way of thinking about it, well, we look at the days of the year, which are part of the cycle. I'm trying to understand exactly where that was. Because he says, "Ki b'kol yemos hashana ikukov v'nesedim v'b'chidish sheshes shemei bereishis." So I haven't really got it figured out where the sheshes bereishis. He says because there were 6 days of the week, and each one of them is part of the tikkun affecting the 6 days of creation plus the 7th day, which is Shabbos. I don't know. But the Ktivus of the Manim, where it fits in to a different cycle, say the cycle of the Shmitah, for example. But we don't mention it, or it's not actually counted out loud. The Yomim Tovim, so let's look at this. Kamo Pesach, Shavuos, Rosh Hashanah, V'od, Iker Kavanesein, Dechuba Bechinas of Kolelos, Kol Koshana. So he says that the main thing that we're thinking about when we come to Pesach, Shavuot, like that, Rosh Hashanah, is that the main thing we should be concentrating on, which refers to the whole year, which is part of a cycle of Zamanim. So therefore, the times of the days, and when we're looking at the holiday itself, the days are going to be subservient to that. So there we don't really concentrate on that, because the Zaman is overtaking it. It doesn't mean that it's not part of the system, it's not part of the kolel of the days. But on the other hand, what we're concentrating on is what's going on in the holiday. So this is according to the Shem and Sasam. And then all the rest of the different parts of the Zamanim, Hashaychel call Yom v'Yom, Yomim, so there that gets counted up along with it, comes subservient to the count of the days. The Saknaso, Maskanaso, I guess, is Lamaicha Gan, but Pesach Anayim also agrees with that idea. Now this is very abstract. Let's look at, we have a couple more minutes, so let's look at a little bit more. Whoops, sorry. So he says, what's the reason, the thinking of the Shem and Sasa, where he says that one becomes subservient or absorbed in the other because of the prominence either of the days or of the seasons. So he said, and he says, what Shuhu Pirish, Masha Kasav Rav Zal Lo what's this like? This is, we saw this metaphor before. It's like this concept. And what does the concept mean? Lamayin, like a well, spring, hanoitif tipin, which is dripping little by little. Then he said, so then he says that the heaven opens up, Niftachu, they all open up, the rove, because there's so much water that comes out. And this is the metaphor, say, for example, when we're talking about the Muadim. When we're talking about that, he says that the amount of water that comes out through them, as a metaphor, is going to swallow up the day type thing. So the days go by, each one day, there's 365 of them, they're going by one at a time, and they're being lumped into different categories, and 365 is the number. So he says, so those are the days. When the Mu'adim come around, so then the tipus of the Yomim, and we don't call them, we don't recognize them, or they're subsumed in the Zman. So, but it doesn't explain why during the weekday, but he doesn't explain why we don't talk about that, why we don't, what Bechinas Zamanim, Ola B'Shem, so why don't we call that out during, at the part of the Zaman, why don't we do that? He doesn't explain it. Because that's the idea over there of the Torah Chacham, that they're actually Masukah together. So he says, where is that? He says, let's talk about that, because we see the Nasira every single day, but we see a big time in Nasira that's taking place on Rosh Hashanah. He saw the Shnas Hazmanim, and this is for the yearly cycle. Every single night. Biuru shemuadim ikrach kavanon b'partzufim samanim v'nichlol b'tikun gam b'chidas yomim of the shuchut tefela b'zeh. So this he's saying what I said. He says it becomes nullified to it. So we have a Nasira every single night. Now, I thought the Nasira was in the morning. So he says the Nasira that takes place every single night, because there, what you're talking about daily is the tikkun that takes place on a day. Because it's during the weekdays. But they're actually just subservient or tofel to them. Okay, I think that's it. So we got through that time there, and we saw a little bit more of this language of how different times and the season and time itself are working together, but at the same time, different levels of, we'll just say, of which is tofel, which is the ikr, which is the tofel, depends on as time goes on. So that's it. See you tomorrow, God willing.